There is a case taking place for legal reasons. I can't actually mention who it is, but on the 27th of October, this coming Thursday, at the Royal Courts of Justice, there is a case coming up which I should be present at and need to be present at that may be of interest. So if anyone can manage to come along to that, it would be very much appreciated. Nextly, I have another pre-trial hearing in my own case, which is obviously the breach of the peace charge against me in Scotland for daring to expose the horrific sequence of paedophile crime in Aberdeen. I have a pre-trial hearing on the 2nd of November. That's more or less a formality. And then I go to trial on the 14th of November, which is expected to take 2 weeks and will be held in Stonehaven, just south of Aberdeen. And at this particular trial, my excellent defence team in Scotland, led by a lady called Frances McMenamin QC, one of the top women defence lawyers in Scotland, has decided that my defence, which I agree with wholeheartedly, is on the basis of the right of a journalist both to publish what he believes to be the truth and in the public interest. So this is a whole matter for free speech throughout the country. It's a matter for, by extension, freedom of expression. And I hope that that stance alone will create a great deal of interest. I should also say in relation to this case that on my website, Holly Demands Justice, Robert Green's blog, my legal team did ask me to make an appeal for people to write letters of support to me that they could present to the sheriff. And I'm very pleased to say I've had the most wonderful response from all over the world, many letters, and wonderful letters of support and some very kind comments. Some of you in this room I know have been involved in that. So wherever you are, in this room or outside, I'd just like to publicly thank you very much indeed for your wonderful support. It means a lot to me, but most importantly of all, it means a lot to Anne and Holly, who know all about this support, and it really does mean a great deal to them, great comfort to them to know that the world is watching and there's so much support. Following the particular trial, whatever that happens, as long as I'm not imprisoned at the end of it, which is always a possibility in Scotland, because it's a police state, make no mistake about it, on the 30th of November, as I mentioned a little earlier to Mr. Hemming when he was here, is that I've been invited to address members of Parliament in the House of Commons. That's Wednesday, the 30th of November. This particular hearing is not, this particular event is not open to the public in general. It's obviously open to all members of Parliament, and there will be certain people who are invited as well. It's not within my power to invite anybody, so I can't do much about that. But that's the way the event is organised. So that should be of great interest. And the theme of that, although I can't go into it too deeply at the moment, is the network of satanic ritual abuse that exists in Britain at this very time. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible scandal. We've heard about Christine and all the rest of it, talk about these terrible things. This is another shocking story that is an absolute disgrace to our country. It's against everything we've stood for. It's against everything that our sort of forebears fought for. We really have to sort things out in Britain. We are living in a scandalous time, and too many people are scared to speak up. And I include most members of Parliament here. When I do address the members of Parliament, I can assure you that when the time comes that I can address members of Parliament, I will not be appealing for them to help. I will be expecting them to speak out. Stop being cowards. Come forward. Children are being abused. Children are being stolen in this country. The most appalling things are happening, and it's time that somebody had the guts to speak out in Parliament. There are a few people there. In fairness, there are people who've been working behind the scenes, sometimes things that I haven't known about, because fortunately this case has been followed underground to a large extent, and there are some very powerful and influential people who are very much aware of it. Some of them are frightened by it, but some of them have got the guts to be looking into it, and I hope to be able to build on that support in the very near future. What I'd like to say today is that one of there are many issues, of course, that come up as a result of this very complex case. But one area we're in particular where we're making lots of progress at the moment is the death of Anne's uncle, Robert David Gregg, without any question murdered on the night of the 17th of November 1997, just shortly after he witnessed Holly's father sexually abusing her. Now, we've been, with the help of many, many people here I can't even begin to mention, we've been putting a great deal of pressure on the Scottish authorities, Grampian Police, the Crown Office, the Fire Service, all of these people for months and months and months, and they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid giving answers. But answers that we have received in the last few days are as follows. Just to, if you're not aware of this, Roy was found, or he's known as Roy, Robert Gregg, but he's known as Roy to his family, was found in a stationary burning car on the outskirts of Aberdeen on the night of the 17th of November, as I mentioned, 1997. Within 4 hours of him being found, and we now finally have some of the official reports on this, the authorities decided that he had committed suicide. This is the most preposterous assumption one could possibly make, for the following reasons. Even if you didn't know anything about the case, people very, very rarely commit suicide by fire. It's just too painful. And generally speaking, if people do die in this particular fashion, it's usually most often accidental, or the second most likely cause of this is foul play. But this was never investigated. And of course, I'm sure many of you are aware that in the rape gang named by Holly was a local sheriff, the head of forensics in the Aberdeen area, and a senior fire officer. And it's quite clear now that they colluded together to cover up his death as a suicide when in fact it was a murder. I've also just got hold of the tapes that were being withheld for ages after my police interview on the 12th of February when I was first arrested in Aberdeen, in which I named the person who I believed was responsible for the murder of Robert David Gregg, and I'll name him now. His name is Sylvester Cadger. Now, and he works as a supervisor for Exxon in Aberdeen. And when I gave this document, when I put this over on the police tape that should be going before the court, when I received the transcript, this complete part about me naming this particular individual was completely omitted from the tape. That is a criminal offence to in any way tamper with police evidence. Finally, thanks to pressure from my excellent solicitor, Mr. Jerry Sweeney, we've managed to get hold of those tapes. I listened to them in his office last Monday. The tapes, to my surprise, have not been tampered with. But guess what? They brought in a new transcript that is consistent with the tape now. So this is the kind of thing that we're seeing, this mass corruption in Scotland, which is absolutely appalling. Also, other documents I've received, I did recently approach the Grampian Police about the incidence of suicide in stationary vehicles by fire. And I asked, and not so sort of overlap with the case of Robert Gregg's death, I asked how many cases in the last 10 years did they have of this type of suicide in this particular circumstances? Going back to 2001, I did receive a reply, and the answer was just one, which is one more than I thought, to be quite honest. But that was the issue. Also now, just before I came out, just on Saturday morning, I received a letter from the National Health Service in Aberdeen, and in the letter they said there was absolutely no indication that anybody had asked for a report, a medical report, on Roy Gregg's state of mind. And I think you can see, if you're going to ascribe the motive of suicide to any death, you certainly want to have a look at people's mental state and all the rest of it, just to see, if it really was a suicide. But it appears that no one, the police or anyone else, did not make a request for medical evidence, and in fact, the NHS believe that they have no indication that anyone else ever asked for those medical records. It was a stitch-up. It was that a good man has been murdered because he would be able to bring down a gang that at the end of the day would be in a position to bring down the government of Scotland, the current Scottish Nationalist Party government, including Alex Salmond and Kenny McCaskill. Obviously we have documents that some of you may have seen showing that the First Minister, who claimed not to know anything about the case, we've actually got documents, including documents from his own office, talking about the case. This man should go. I should be making this point very forcibly when I address MPs on the 30th of November. This type of thing has to be brought to an end. And what also has to be brought to an end is the appalling oppression of Anne and Holly by the authorities in Shropshire. And this, in a way, has captured the imagination of some of the members of Parliament, because I think thanks to some of you in here, and perhaps some of you who may be watching this, I'm well aware now that a number of MPs have been concerned by the number of letters they've received from their constituents saying, what are you going to do about this terrible case of Holly Gregg in Scotland? And they've had so many letters, I understand, that some of them, who perhaps decently enough and perhaps got a little bit of courage about them and public spiritedness, have started looking into this and following the story. And they can see this is a scandal of monumental magnitude, probably the worst case of a government cover-up of the most horrendous crimes that I think we'll ever have seen in our lifetime. It really is that bad. But fortunately, things are moving well, and I hope that I'll be able to expose this very fully. I'm very much looking forward to my trial as well, because although we haven't sort of talked about the details yet, it's highly likely that members of the rape gang and the people who have collaborated with them will be brought before the court for cross-examination, and that should be very interesting indeed. It's in open court, as is the case with on Thursday, the Royal Courts of Justice. Anybody can come, and anybody can come to Stonehaven if the trial I say if the trial takes place, because I think the opposition have got a lot more to lose than I have, but we shall see. Anyway, I didn't want to talk too much because I know many of you know about the story. Clearly you do by your applause, you obviously have a knowledge of it. So what I thought I would do, knowing that obviously I want to give as much time to people who are talking about their cases, because obviously the Holly Gregg case has received a great deal of publicity, and so it's quite well known. Other people perhaps maybe speaking about their cases for the first time in public, and I think it's very important to give as much time as possible. So what I propose to do, rather than going over a lot of things that you've probably heard many, many times before, is to open the floor for any questions. But before I do so, I would just like to thank everybody who's supported us so valiantly over the last 2 years or so. Thank you for all the wonderful help that we've received, and I will thank you on behalf of Anne and Holly particularly as well, because what people have done is absolutely magnificent. I'd also like to thank the very courageous team in Scotland who've been working very, very hard indeed, almost undercover, because Scotland is 100% a police state now. They have worked so hard to help us and to a great risk to themselves, and I just want to thank everybody. I'm sort of at the front here, and people are very kind to me and say very nice things. Some people say not so nice things, but a lot of people do say nice things, which I very much appreciate. But this is very much a team effort, and there are a lot of people who get no credit for this at all because they're not known. But obviously, I hope that the day will come very soon when we'll be able to mention all these gallant and heroic people who have stood up for these to have these terrible crimes dealt with, and the rape gang to be brought to justice finally. So having said that, I wonder if anyone would like to ask me any questions. Now, before I answer it, there are certain things, I have certain legal constraints on what I might say. There are also confidentiality issues involving people other than myself, which I must respect, of course, or I might not just know the answer to it, but I will not be evasive. I'll tell you as much as I possibly can. Gentleman, Emily.
Well, thank you. We'd all like to give Anne and Holly our very best regards, and the police like that. We're all asking about them.
Oh yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. As it happens, there was a possibility of Anne and Holly coming along today, but with a certain case coming up in the next few days, we thought it was probably unwise to do so close to a case that I can't even mention really. But they'll be absolutely delighted at the sport, and thank you very much indeed for that very kind comment. Gentleman there, on the left.
I would just like to ask you again, could you name and shame that person you named before? Nice and loud and proud, please.
What, again?
Yes, please.
You don't mean Sylvester Cadger, do you?
Absolutely.
Yes, was it him, really? Yes, yes, indeed. There are a lot more about. I've seen the evidence, or I'm aware of the evidence that he provided. He was supposed to be the rescuer, and guess what? He got a medal from the Royal Humane Society for his bravery in trying to rescue poor Roy Gregg. But I think this man is up to his neck. I've actually invited people on a number of occasions when I've appeared, odd times on television or radio or whatever. I've always made the point that if I accuse any individual or any organisation of anything that they regard as unfair or inaccurate, they can contact me at any time and I'll give them a platform. In fact, one of the Sky TV channels, where some of you may have been aware of, where I was on live at the 25th of August, Sky very kindly offered the facility of saying to anybody they would actually put a programme on where I would debate this with anybody who in any way I've maligned at all unfairly. They all had an open invitation to come and talk to me. How many people do you think have come forward? Anybody? You're right, not a big zero. Not one person's had the guts to come forward and take me on. And I'm quite prepared to take the lot of on single-handed if necessary. I think they're a bunch of cowards. Anyway, next question. Thank you.
Yes,
gentlemen.
You mentioned satanic abuse.
Yes.
Is that it seems like that's quite a new sort of...
Yes, it is a new thing. It's not really new to the case, but I've deliberately not mentioned it. I have to say, I think many of you who've been following the story will know that some of the crimes that have been committed are so appalling and so shocking and so disgusting that, in a way, I didn't mention them too much because they're the things that should come before the court in due course. And obviously, in the early stages of this case, when I was trying to get people to believe in this astonishing sequence of events, I felt that it was probably not wise to sort of ascribe motives to people for what people had done. I was more interested in what they'd actually done rather than the motive for doing so. But now it's become quite clear that there is, well, I've always been aware of the satanic ritual abuse connection with what's happened to Holly Gregg, but it's now become quite widely known that there is a network, a very, very serious network operating up and down this country, and that's one of the reasons why Shropshire, where none of the crimes took place, suddenly jumped in and tried to persecute Anne and Holly to shut them up. It is related to this kind of network that exists all over the country. And I can tell you I have some names, and some names are, you wonder why these stories are not reported in the mainstream media. Well, I know a few people in the mainstream media in senior positions who are involved in this. I also know the names of certain politicians, certain people in the House of Lords, certain MPs, some of whom Mr. Hemming will know. Not Mr. Hemming, I must say, but certain other ones. And in the due course, I will be revealing the names of all those people. And you will all begin to know why this has been suppressed at the highest level. In fact, there are two people close to the Prime Minister who are going to be very, very embarrassed when all this information comes out. So if MPs are getting pressed by the whips and all the rest of it behind the scenes, as they are, no doubt they are, it's because we've more or less sorted out the top in Scotland, but we're going to be getting close to the top in England as well.
Are you saying they're Satanists? Sorry, are you saying they're Satanists, those people?
Yes, there are a number of people we believe are involved with satanic ritual abuse. And these people are in England, they're not in Scotland. They're quite apart from the gang involved with Holly directly, and the other children, of course, in Aberdeen. There are others as well. But that will come out in the course of time. Gentleman there.
Grandchild. There's the case of these children that were bundled away. And what happened to them is horrific, okay? They were put in foster care in overcrowded conditions in a foster care home which I now realise is notorious for being a hellhole. That's the only way it can be described, okay? The same people who own that foster care home own hostels in Kendal, where they house paedophiles alongside single mothers with children without warning anybody, okay? Those children My cousins were sodomised at age 9 and 11. Both of them had statements of special educational needs. Like another young lady that we know, that we won't mention today, but we all know who she is, okay? There seems to be a speciality for children with special needs. And these people are so depraved I can't even think about where their heads are at. The one thing I do know is this is satanic. And as long as I can breathe my last breath, I will fight Satanism and Luciferianism.
Thank you very much indeed, Yvonne, and thank you again to all of you. Thank you for giving me a very kind hearing today. But obviously I will pass over to Brian now, because there are many, many more horrific stories that need to be told and need to be heard about. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen.